We pick up in this video with the ending of the Knoxville Campaign, just as the battle for Bean Station had taken place. We will dive into the events of the winter of 1863 through 1864. Like his Union counterpart, General William Tecumseh Sherman, who had a mental breakdown in Kentucky before he came to Tennessee, Lieutenant General James Longstreet would have a mental and emotional crisis of his own. And we will discuss how the events surrounding the Siege of Knoxville will change the reputations of the generals involved. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine for our flight back in time, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger vehicle to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. The aftermath of the Knoxville Campaign. While it seems odd to begin a story with an ending, it is just the beginning for Lieutenant General Longstreet's long winter of 1863 through 1864. The campaign officially ended with the battle for Bean Station. Both sides wintered the cold months, Longstreet in Russellville and Burnside in Knoxville. This would be a bitter winter for Longstreet, as he was not able to defeat Burnside and recapture Knoxville. The cost of the Siege of Knoxville, Tennessee was very dear. The Union had 92 killed, 394 wounded, and 207 missing, for a total of 693 casualties. The Confederates had 198 killed, 850 wounded, and 248 missing, for a total of 1,296 casualties. But this had lasting effects on other battles of the Civil War. General Bragg was deprived of men that he needed to defeat General Grant in Chattanooga. Grant would finally defeat Bragg at the Battle of Missionary Ridge on November 25, 1863. This was the first time that Lieutenant General Longstreet was allowed to campaign on his own, and it was a miserable failure. So he would have to spend the winter months licking his wounds of his bruised ego. Instead of self-reflection and looking upon his own mistakes, Longstreet instead placed the blame on others for his failures. He had relieved from command Lafayette McLaws. He would later hold a court-martial trial against McLaws on March 11, 1864, at the home of Mrs. Jane West, which was being used as a headquarters of General Edward Porter, Longstreet's artillery commander. McLaws was later acquitted of the charges. Longstreet went further and requested a court-martial for Brigadier Generals Jerome B. Robertson and Evander M. Law. Longstreet also submitted a letter of resignation and to be relieved of duty to Adjutant General Samuel Cooper on December 30, 1863, who denied this request. Unable to return to Virginia because of the inclement weather, Longstreet's troops would suffer horribly in East Tennessee through the bitter cold without adequate shelter and provisions. Burnside, on the other hand, would have a boost in his reputation as field commander. His conduct during the Knoxville campaign changed the minds of those in charge in Washington who doubted that he could be successful. His reputation had been severely damaged at Fredericksburg, and he is often ranked among the top 10 worst commanders in history over it. Because of his hold on Knoxville, along with Grant's victory at Chattanooga, placed the majority of East Tennessee firmly in the hands of the Union side of the Civil War. The long winter. Longstreet did not stay in one spot for very long. This is what we could find out about his movements during the winter of 1863 through 1864. From December 22, 1863 to January 29, 1864, Lieutenant General James Longstreet and his staff resided at the Nenny House in Russellville, Tennessee. We have an idea of the weather conditions from Longstreet's 1896 memoir of the war. Quote, During the last few days of the year of 1863, the cold of the severest winter of the war came on, and constantly increased until the thermometer approached zero, and on New Year's dropped below, hanging near that figure for about 2 weeks. The severe season gave rest to everyone. Even the cavalry had a little quiet, but it was cold comfort, for their orders were to keep the enemy in sight. Unquote. General James Longstreet, from his 1896 memoir of the war, quote found on an information board at the Longstreet Ninny House Museum. Bearing the cold weather in mind, 2,000 men were without shoes. Even though the men had built log cabins for shelter, they were still suffering horribly under the freezing conditions. The ground was covered by ice, sleet, and snow, and was hard as a frozen rock, with sharp edges of ground that would cut into the men's naked feet. It could have been said that Longstreet's army could be tracked by the bloody footprints left behind them. The food supplies were dwindling fast. Even though the Confederate soldiers had commandeered the cane mill, and the slaves there were grinding corn for the soldiers day and night, it was not enough, and the supplies were fading fast. During these months, the Battle of Mossy Creek, Dandridge, and Fair Gardens took place. January 29th, Longstreet and his men moved to Morristown, Tennessee. However, they left Russellville under the Confederate control. The hungry troops remained to forage the area for supplies, even though the area was quickly running out of food. The next we find about the winter months for Longstreet came from a sign in Greeneville, Tennessee. According to the sign, on February 18, 1864, Longstreet once again moved his headquarters to the house of Judge Samuel Milligan, who was a Unionist. However, his troops were stationed 25 miles west of Greeneville, Tennessee, and in late December of 1863, they had moved 15 miles east to Lick Creek Valley. During this time, Longstreet's staff had taken up a short-term residence in the Greeneville home of Joseph R. Brown, also known as Boxwood Manor, and other buildings in the area. They continued to forage for food in the area and would clash against Union patrols from time to time. Longstreet's Adjutant General, Lieutenant Colonel G. Moxley Sorrell, and his staff constantly sent telegraphs to Richmond for the Confederate government to send relief. They requested grain, shoes, clothing, and fodder for the horses. General John Hunt Morgan joined Longstreet during this time for shelter. Morgan had escaped from Ohio prison on November 27th and made his way south to Longstreet. It was shortly after his stay that Morgan left Longstreet to go on his Kentucky raids once more. In our next series, we will take a look at the events surrounding the battles of Chattanooga and how General Bragg would make mistakes that would cost the Confederacy East Tennessee for the remainder of the war. Thank you. We at Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the Appalachian Civil War battles. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. Be sure to double check that you are subscribed, as some of our viewers are finding that they are no longer subscribed to our channel. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.